Welcome to Dates and Dead Guys. I'm Miles Fisher, and today we're going to be learning about the Theogony. It is an epic poem written by Hesiod over 2,700 years ago, and it tells the story about how the old gods, the Titans, lose power to the new gods, the Olympians. It should be noted before we begin that Hesiod is not the only ancient Greek to actually write about this story, but his account is the oldest surviving account, so that is the one that people tend to look to the most often. According to Hesiod, quote, "In the beginning, there was only chaos, the abyss, but then Gaia, the earth, came into being." End quote. This happens quite a bit in the story. Gaia is the earth, but the way that it's written inside the epic poem is that Gaia appears to be both a person and a planet, which makes it a little bit difficult to follow. In the story, Gaia has a child. The child is Uranus, starry heaven or the sky. In some version of the story, it appears that Uranus has a father, Acmon, but in this version, it appears to be more of a Virgin Mary type situation. Despite being mother and son, Gaia and Uranus then have many children. Even from the beginning, the family tree in Greek mythology can become a little bit complicated, but all we really need to know right now is that the children of Uranus and Gaia are mostly considered Titans. There are others that are not considered Titans, like the Cyclops or some guys with a lot of heads and a lot of arms. Two of their children, Rhea and the youngest, Cronus, are especially important to the story. Uranus would stuff his children into the earth, Gaia, in order to keep them from the light. You can picture them buried in the planet or in the mother's womb, doesn't so much matter to me. Either way, it's weird. Gaia doesn't much appreciate this and develops a plan to cut off Uranus's balls. This is kind of a weird side point, but there could be as many as 7 of them. It's not particularly relevant to the story, and it did make for some awkward Google searches. Hesiod doesn't bring it up, but I have run across this before, so we can assume that Uranus does have somewhere between 2 and 7 testicles. But back to Gaia's reasonable plan. She appeals to all of her children, presumably still inside her, to fight back against their father. All of them are fearful, but not the youngest, not Cronus. He volunteers. Gaia gives Cronus a large sickle-shaped blade, and in accordance with her plan, he waits for Uranus to start having sex with his mother. Then, when the moment is right, he springs out and fruit ninjas his father's mysterious number of testicles. Cronus takes the member and tosses it behind him. It lands in the sea, which is still technically Gaia, and white foam emerges. That white foam later becomes Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love. Cronus takes control, as his father is now dickless, and he finds himself rather attracted to his sister Rhea. They start making babies right away, and Rhea is very excited to have her brother's children. Cronus, however, becomes rather nervous and tyrannical because Uranus and Gaia tell him that he will one day be overthrown by one of his children with Rhea. Cronus, the problem solver, starts eating his children. The writing from the Theogony depicts him as doing this in one big gulp, but the imagery from the art in the time period shows it to be far more violent. Rhea wasn't exactly thrilled with her children being eaten whole, and after 5 of them, she had had enough. With Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon all swallowed, she comes up with a master plan to fool Cronus into not eating any more kids. She tricks Cronus, the god, into thinking a rock was actually her newest baby, after having wrapped the rock in a blanket. Cronus eats the rock and blanket, doesn't notice that it's not a child, and goes along his merry way, I assume doing some good charity work or something like that. But in reality, Rhea didn't give birth to a rock. She actually gave birth to a baby named Zeus, and she left him on Crete to be raised by goats and or forest nymphs. The timeline isn't exactly clear, but Zeus grows big and strong and eventually gets a job as Cronus' cupbearer. Zeus then gives Cronus a mixture of wine and mustard. Cronus then pukes up each of his siblings in reverse order, starting with the rock, still alive for a reason, and I'm pretty sure as adults. Because this event is technically a rebirth, Zeus is now the oldest sibling, despite originally having been the youngest, the rock being the second oldest, and then followed by his siblings down the line. But with Rhea's children having been reborn, Zeus quickly leaves to free the other sons of Uranus from Tartarus, including the Cyclops and the Hecaton Cherries, or the 100-handed. You would think that at this point in the story it would move right on to a war between the Titans and the Olympians, but Hesiod actually gets a little bit distracted with Prometheus and Pandora before moving on. These side stories are not the main focus of the myth. In short, Zeus has Prometheus make people, but gets mad when he gives them fire, so he chains him to the side of a mountain to live out eternity getting his liver eaten out by vultures. And Pandora is basically the biblical Adam and Eve, where everything is great for humans until women ruin it. The Theogony then returns from the side plot to talk about the Titanomachy, or the 10-year war between the Titans and the children of Cronus and Rhea, the new Olympian gods. Hesiod sums up his explanation of the Titanomachy in 105 lines of his epic poem. We don't have a ton of detail, and other writing has been lost to history, but this is what Hesiod said. After years of fighting against the Titans, Zeus gives a speech to his squad. He says, quote, "Hear me, glorious children of earth and heaven, while I speak my mind. For a long time now, the Titans and those of us born from Cronus have been fighting daily for victory and dominance. Show the Titans your strength, the invincible might of your hands. Oppose them in this grisly conflict." End quote. With this speech, everyone on the Olympian side gets juiced up, and Zeus starts just chucking thunderbolts that were made for him by the Cyclops that he had freed from Tartarus. Hesiod wrote of Zeus in battle, quote, "His lungs seethed with anger, and he revealed all his power, hurling thunderbolts one after another right on target. From his massive hand, a whirlwind of holy flame, and the earth that bears life roared as it burned. The endless forest cracked with fire, and the continents melted and the ocean streams boiled." End quote. The blast that enveloped the Titans blinded them. The Hecatoncheires fired hundreds of stones and buried the Titans, beating them down to Tartarus, as far under the earth as the sky is above the surface. Tartarus is where the Titans will be held. It's part of the underworld, and he is a god in his own right. He is one of the primordial beings along with Gaia, the earth. To get there, it's a 10-day fall for a bronze anvil to reach Tartarus from earth. In Tartarus, there is a giant bronze wall. Above the wall are the roots of the earth and the sea. The wall is guarded by the Hecatoncheires. The gods don't like it. It's grim and dark, and there's apparently a big-ass hole that would take a man over a year to climb to the bottom of. With the war over and most of the Titans locked in Tartarus, Hesiod moves on to give us a little bit of background information on the Olympian family tree and what's going to come next in the story. Gaia, for example, suggests that Zeus should be king, and the other gods seem to be okay with that. Zeus marries Metis, the daughter of Titans, and that goes well until he eats her. Zeus has another wife or two before he winds up marrying Hera and has a completely non-toxic relationship, the kind that we should all aspire to. Other gods are born, and the family tree is drawn out by Hesiod, but those are all stories for another day. At the end of his epic poem, the Olympian gods are in power. Most of the Titans are locked in Tartarus, and the humans are now just getting started. But there is a lesson that we can learn from the fall of Cronus. If you're worried about your children overthrowing you, chew. Thanks for watching.